My name is Anthony Beets. Today we're going to talk about personal protective equipment, specifically gloves. We're going to take about 10 minutes to do this. Upon completion of this section, we hope that you better understand how to pick the proper type of glove for the job depending on the task that you're going to be doing. So we've got 5 different gloves here. We've got the jersey, lightweight gloves. We've got our stronger leather gloves, cut resistant, chemical rubber gloves, and common construction gloves. Some people call these mechanics gloves. Anytime you have questions about safety equipment, you always want to refer back to your OSHA standards for construction, 1926 CFR, just to double check and make sure that we're doing everything correctly. So I've got the different gloves on display right now. At this time, I would let students come up, look at the gloves, actually get them in their hands, feel them, feel the different types of material that they're made out of, and kind of discuss the threading and whether they would be soak up water, you know, hold moisture, cut resistant, that type of thing. Just kind of do a preliminary look at the gloves. And then I want to talk about why is the personal protective equipment so important to you, specifically the worker on the job. The role that the gloves play in protecting our hands, our fingers, our hands are what we're going to be actually performing the work with most of the time. So this is our ability to provide for our family, to make the money on the job, and to get the job done for the contractor. So we want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves, protecting our fingers and protecting ourselves from these potential hazards on the job site. Lost time for ourselves mean less money for our family, obviously. And then also there's you have to understand the contractor side of it also. There's a safety rating for the contractor, and there's wages, lost time for the contractor also. So safety is a huge part of not only ourselves or our personal safety, but it's also for the contractor, for the job site. We want to make sure that everyone is a part of the safety team. When we use different terms, I always like to make sure that we understand what that term is. When we talk about PPE, we're talking about personal protective equipment. That's your gloves, your hard hat, your safety glasses, your work boots, anything that's going to protect you from potential hazards. So when we talk about PPE, that's what we're talking about, personal protective equipment, okay? Now, before we use any type of PPE, we always want to look at what can we do to eliminate or reduce the hazard so that we're not just relying on the gloves to protect our hands. We want to look at what's called engineering controls, things like the guard on your equipment. Make sure the guards are working properly and the tools are in good working condition, that there's not going to be any malfunction that's going to cause the equipment to strike our hands, and then, you know, us relying on the gloves. That should be the final protection there. You always want to use your SDS, your safety data sheets. Refer to those if there's any type of chemical that you're working with. Again, we don't want to rely on the rubber gloves as the first line of defense. That should be the last line of defense. So that's another type of control we can look at there. You always want to make sure that we're using safe work practices. Again, we don't want to rely on the gloves just because we're doing something that's unsafe or that we shouldn't be doing and expect the gloves to do their job. We always want to make sure that we're watching out for pinch points, caught in between injuries, and moving parts and tools. You don't want to get your glove caught in a moving part of a tool and have your hand sucked into it that way. Then it's working against us and not helping us. So we always want to have safe work practices while we're doing our given task. Assess the job before we start working. We're going to assess the job. We're going to look for those pinch points, make sure the guards are working properly and all those different types of things. This is going to help us determine what type of glove we're going to use. If there are if we're working with metal studs, or if we're working with razor blades, then there's a risk of getting cut. If we're working with chemicals and solvents and glues and things like that, then there might be a risk of our skin absorbing the chemical that we're using. So we want to look at more of a rubber glove there. So we just want to assess the job overall first, and then we're going to go through the different gloves and we're going to determine which one is best. So we're just going to start with the Jersey lightweight gloves here, with the benefits and the disadvantages of these. With the Jersey lightweight gloves, they're very lightweight. You're looking at tasks, medial tasks, such as shoveling. Some people will use these in gardening, light duty tasks, just to help your hands to not get calloused. Or a lot of people will use these in the wintertime, just as an extra layer for your skin from the cold. And especially if you're working with metal and things like that in the wintertime, it just helps to keep your hands a little bit warmer and give a little extra protection, but that's about as far as these are gonna go. A disadvantage to these is they tear easily, and if you were working with things that would cut your hands, it would cut right through this and cut straight into your skin. So this is a very lightweight glove right there, the Jersey lightweight gloves. The next one that we're gonna discuss are the leather gloves. This allows for a little bit more protection with your hands. It's very thick. It's going to give you more protection against cuts and heavy duty tasks such as using a jackhammer or anything like that that is a little bit more intense. Now the bad thing about these is you can see, because they are heavier duty, they've got it's hard to grab small things. If I was going to put screws into a wall or something to get a screw out of my pouch, it would be very difficult with these big bulky leather gloves. But it is going to give you more protection than the lightweight gloves. So depending on the task, these gloves would be better suited. Now we're going to move on to the next type, which is the cut resistant. These are very good. I've used these a lot working inside on drywall, metal stud type of applications where you're using a razor knife and there's potential for getting cut. This has, some of them will have Kevlar in them and different types of materials just to reduce that risk of being cut. And you can see it's not bulky. My hands and my fingers are very able to move and grab small things. If I had to get the screws out of the pouch there, I could reach right in and get what I need, and it's not a problem. So that's the cut resistant. The next type we're going to talk about here are the rubber chemical gloves. These are the gloves that you're going to use if you're working with solvents or any type of chemical that your skin can actually absorb these types of chemicals. So you want something that's waterproof and is going to give you protection against those chemicals. Now these are a heavier duty rubber gloves. We're not using just like kitchen dish gloves. You want to get something that's better suited for construction purposes. And you can see these go up almost halfway up the arm there. So if I was doing a task, I would want to make sure that I'm not going to get chemicals up past that point. I will work down here in the hand area, and these are going to protect you from those types of hazards. Now this is not going to protect you much from getting cut. A piece of metal or a sharp object would cut right through the rubber pretty easily. This is again for chemicals and water resistant type applications there. Common construction gloves. Now these are really handy for framing, wood framing. You can see these I've got some use out of these. I enjoy wearing these most of the time unless I need something more specific for a cut resistant application or a very heavy duty leather glove application. Most of the time I'm going to wear these over the Jersey gloves. They fit my hand a little bit better, and it just gives you, there's leather on the palm and leather on the fingers and not leather on the back, and that gives you the movement there. And if you get a well-fitting construction glove, you can see I've got my fingers available to grab the screws as we talked about earlier. So it gives you the mobility, also a little bit of that leather protection. And this is just a common construction glove that I'm going to wear most of the time unless I need more specific protection there. It's always important to wear gloves though, for the reasons we talked about earlier. We want to keep ourselves safe, keep our fingers in working order, and everybody's happy at the end of the day. The contractor's happy, you are happy, your family's happy. Safety #1 on the job. We're just going to review a little bit here. Always remember that personal protective equipment should be the last line of defense. Don't count on our gloves or any other piece of PPE as the sole protector of yourself and your body. Why will PPE never protect us 100% from hazards? Accidents can still occur. Accidents are always going to happen. It's a way of life. And once an accident happens, we can't go back and change it. Now we just have to move forward and deal with the consequences. So we always want to do the best job we can of preventing or reducing those hazards. The best way to protect ourselves is with safe work practices. Don't put yourself in a bad situation. If you have a tool that the guard is not working or there are pieces that are not functioning properly, instead of using that tool, obviously we want to stop, assess the situation, maybe tag out the tool and get another tool. Always make sure we're wearing our personal protective equipment also. Could ask other why questions to clarify with the students and ask if they have any other questions about the gloves. We could go over them one more time and make sure that everyone understands what the different applications are for at this point. And then for the evaluation process, I would just give each student a specific job scenario with working conditions, and they would be required to select the proper gloves needed for that specific task and give me one safety-related reason why they chose that glove. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.